Hey folks, this is Kalani. We have quite a few updates to go over this week. There are 8 new hero talent trees for us to preview ahead of the War Within alpha test, which should be starting up relatively soon. There are updates to Season 3 of Dragonflight, how follower dungeons reward experience and how often you can run them, and we should see some new retail content in the next few weeks. The Season of Discovery is also seeing some huge changes with the next weekly reset that has stirred up quite a bit of controversy. There's a lot to talk about, so let's break it all down. Now before we jump in, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. First up for this week, we have another round of hero talent previews, but this time we're getting a sneak peek at 8 new hero talent trees, which is double what we've gotten in the past. In this set we're going to see some paladin trees, more druid trees, an evoker tree, one for the rogues, one for the warlocks, and another warrior tree. I would encourage you to comb through the trees for your class yourself to see how everything could or will interact. We're going to go through them really quickly to see how they're currently shaping up. To start with, Elun's chosen for Balance and Guardian Druids. This is all about the moon and all the lunar powers that you can use as a druid. Full Moon calls down 2 minor moons to deal damage and generate astral power, while Lunar Beam now provides a leech for 10% of the damage dealt to enemies within the beam. Fury of Elun also ends with an AoE for even more damage. You'll be able to generate extra resources, there are passives for increased damage and reduced damage taken, reduced cooldowns for certain abilities, you can get free Fury of Elun or empower your big cooldowns, and then down at the bottom you'll get even more moons for your moons, a big mastery buff for Guardian, and a larger AoE for Fury of Elun. Moving on, Wildstalker is the Feral and Resto druid tree. This tree seems to double down on overtime effects. For Feral, your Rip and Rake can deal additional damage over time via these vines, while for Resto, several spells can create blooms to apply another heal over time effect. There are various damage and healing bonuses, additional utility or extra healing options. Your vines or blooms can grant you a stacking throughput increase, deal AoE damage or AoE healing when expiring, give you extra chances to generate vines or blooms, and then down at the bottom, any vines active will increase your damage to that target, while any blooms active will increase your healing to that target. So a lot of focus on these new overtime effects and how they interact with your current gameplay. Evokers have a hero talent tree this week, the Scale Commander for Augmentation and Devastation. This one starts with what seems like a very powerful effect, Mass Eruption or Disintegration. Your Eruption or Disintegrate now hits up to 3 targets, and when you hit fewer than 3 targets, you deal extra damage for each missing target. So not only does your main spender now cleave up to 3 targets, but if you can't cleave, you just deal more damage anyway. Talk about a win-win. You get extra damage for Black Dragonflight spells, you can apply a debuff that deals free AoE damage for you and your party. Every time you enter combat, your next Living Flame will be instant. There are buffs for breath abilities, a stacking buff for Living Flame and Azure Strike that stacks up to 50% just for being in combat, various other bonuses to pick up, and then down at the bottom, you'll be able to steer your breath spells and they will deal additional damage over time. I wonder how easy it's going to be to actually steer these things though. They do happen kind of quickly, but it's going to be hilarious to see Evokers just spinning around in circles while breathing over everything. I'm looking forward to seeing this one in action for sure. The Herald of the Sun is the new Holy and Retribution Paladin hero talent tree, and it revolves around a new type of overtime effect called Sunspots, which deal extra damage or healing over time. Sunspots also radiate AoE damage or healing, so it's not just single target throughput. You can increase the effectiveness of Sunspots or deal more damage while they are active. There's a new Word of Glory spell. Sunspots can reduce movement speed of enemies or increase movement speed of allies. You get some free crit from passives. Crit will deal additional damage over time from certain abilities. You'll be able to reliably generate Divine Purpose procs. Sunspots will also give you a stacking haste buff. You'll have a chance to duplicate your spells, and then down at the bottom, Sun's Avatar causes you to link up with your Sunspots, creating beams that deal damage or healing to anyone who pass through them, and then activating Avenging Wrath will actually apply 4 Sunspots onto nearby allies or enemies and further increases their damage. This sounds like it's going to be crazy. I can't wait to see what those beams look like especially. And then the last paladin tree we have to preview is the Templar for Retribution and Protection Paladins. After being used, Eye of Tyr or Wake of Ashes are replaced with Hammer of Light, which deals damage to up to 5 enemies and calls down additional hammers to deal damage. Hammers for days. You can increase your damage when only fighting one target. There are extra AoE options, free defensive procs, some utility buffs, various other ways to call down these Empyrean hammers, and down at the bottom you gain stacks of a buff every time you call down a hammer, and then at 50 stacks you'll be allowed to use Hammer of Light an additional time for free. If you love hammers, this one sounds right up your alley. The Trickster Rogue is a hero talent tree available to Outlaw and Subtlety rogues, which seems to change Feint into a new filler spell. So Feint will generate combo points and phase your enemies, causing them to take extra damage. There are various extra buffs for Feint. You can further empower the phase debuff, and there's a new stacking buff called Flawless Form that grants you a stacking mastery buff. There are buffs for Killing Spree and Secret Technique. You can automatically trigger your Unseen Blade attacks, and then down at the bottom, every 4 Unseen Blade attacks empowers your next Dispatch, Eviscerate, or Black Powder, depending on your spec, dealing extra damage and granting 5 stacks of Flawless Form. So if you can keep those Unseen Blades going, you can have most of your finishers dealing that extra damage with the free mastery stacks. Up next we have the Diabolist, which can be used by Demonology and Destruction Warlocks. The first talent is a new ritual to summon demons. When the ritual expires you will summon an Overlord, Mother of Chaos, or Pit Lord, and we now know that this will in fact be a cycle, so you'll go through each one in turn, which means you will always know which demon is coming out next, and then that demon will unleash a devastating attack when summoned. The various other talents in here buff up each type of demon. There are bonuses to your Soul Shard spells. You can choose different ways to have access to the ritual more often. There are bonuses for some of your cooldowns, buffs to Hand of Gul'dan and Havoc, and then down at the bottom, the Pit Lord demon empowers your Hand of Gul'dan or Chaos Bolt to summon a demon-infested meteor, dealing AoE damage and summoning 3 wild imps. So it's all about demons and how they empower your other spells. And then the Colossus hero talent tree is for the Arms and Protection warriors. You'll gain a new active ability called Demolish, which has a 45-second cooldown and unleashes a series of strikes at your target and enemies within 8 yards. You can stack up a damage bonus for this new ability with Colossal Might. You can choose between stacking AoE damage or stacking dot damage. Colossal Might will increase the damage of other abilities. You can also make yourself 5% larger than everyone else, and there are plenty of passive buffs and boons to pick up. Then down at the bottom you can gain even more stacks of Colossal Might. Excess stacks will provide cooldown reduction for Demolish, giving you access to that faster, and you'll become immovable while channeling Demolish. Having an extra active ability is definitely interesting, but most of this tree seems to revolve around that stacking buff, so maintaining and managing that is going to be key. With these hero talent previews, that also brings our total up to 16 if I remember correctly, so we're definitely getting there. With there being 1 hero preview per spec essentially, I think we should have 39 hero talent trees to look at total, so we're definitely making some good progress. If the current pace continues, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually got to see every single one before the alpha starts up. We're still expecting the War Within alpha to start testing sometime in March or April, but it feels like the roadmap has been shifted a little later, so we're just going to have to wait and see when we finally get that announcement. Now, a super important thing to highlight while talking about hero talents is that these trees are still a work in progress and our feedback does in fact matter. There are already changes being talked about for a few of these ideas, and the Priest Oracle hero talent tree is being taken back to the drawing board, so that one could be completely reworked to not interact with Power Infusion at all. So if you hated the idea of a Power Infusion super support priest, Oracle might do something completely different by the time the War Within actually launches. The dev team have said quite a few times now that they wanted hero talents to be available to test or at least look at super early in the War Within testing cycle so they could get as much feedback as possible with enough time to actually change these things. From what we've seen so far, they are doing exactly that, reacting to feedback and making changes where appropriate before the game even comes up for testing, so it's going to be a lot of fine-tuning to make sure it actually works, but the dev team are listening. Fingers crossed that promise holds true as we work through the alpha and beta, and eventually into pre-patch and launch day. Now, in other news, this week also introduced some changes to how follower dungeons work, specifically related to how they grant experience and how often you can run these NPC-assisted adventures. Before these changes were implemented, you were limited to just 10 follower dungeons in any 24-hour period. You could hit that limit very quickly if you knew what you were doing. The dungeons are quite easy after all. So the first change was to increase that limit up to 50 dungeons in any 24-hour period, so you can run follower dungeons 5 times more often than before, which is a significant increase, and unless you are spamming these things all day for whatever reason, you're probably not going to hit that limit most of the time. Now, most folks will probably say that's kind of whatever, I wasn't really running follower dungeons anyway, but for the few niche cases where follower dungeons are helpful, these extra runs will definitely help. For example, if you want to change things up and get some easy experience while leveling up and don't want to deal with any other type of group content, follower dungeons can give you a way to do that, but they're also quite useful for things like farming certain mounts, pets, or transmog rewards. You don't have to worry about queues, competition, or group members not wanting to do certain activities in the dungeon. You can do it all by yourself and at your own pace, which is great for certain special rewards. But with RNG being RNG, sometimes you need quite a few runs to get these items or collectibles, so the higher run limit allows you to keep farming instead of running into an arbitrary wall. In addition to the extra runs, AI NPCs will also no longer reduce experience gained in follower dungeons, making it more of an option for getting some leveling done on your ults too. Another quick update that we saw this week removed the cap on crests for the rest of Season 3. That's probably not all too useful at this point, seeing as the crest caps were so high, so anyone starting out right now will probably never get anywhere close to those limits, and anyone who has been playing since the start of Season 3 probably doesn't need crests anymore either, but I guess it's nice to not have to worry about any limits moving forward. What this does tell me, however, is that Season 4 should be right around the corner. These limits are usually removed just before the season ends, so we won't have too much longer to wait for Season 4 and everything that comes with it. Now, in the other version of World of Warcraft that has been quite popular recently, there is a huge update coming for the Season of Discovery, which has been quite controversial. Leveling is going to be much faster, gold will be much easier to collect, and you will be able to purchase your mounts without quite as much grinding. With these changes essentially making the game more streamlined and easier, it's no wonder that some folks love these changes while others absolutely despise them. Let's take a look at exactly what is changing first. To start with, the experience bonus buff will be increased up to 100% and it will apply all the way up to level 40. So this used to be just 50% and only work up until level 25, but with these changes in place, not only will 1 to 25 be a lot faster, but 25 to 40 will be twice as fast as well. In addition to that, the cost of mount and mount training are being cut in half, so that should put your total cost somewhere in the ballpark of 50 gold, down from 100 gold, depending on your reputation obviously, and then the dev team are also increasing the gold rewards from all quests while you are level 1 to 39, to make questing more lucrative, but also make sure you can afford spells and upgrades with a faster pace of leveling. So all in all, getting up to level 40, farming gold along the way, and acquiring your mount will all be significantly easier. Now, I would love to see some engagement numbers for Season of Discovery Phase 2, things like number of players at the start of the phase versus now, how many of the players got to level 40, how many ults people are playing, and what level they got to too, that kind of thing, because I have a sneaking suspicion that engagement dropped off much faster in Phase 2 when compared to Phase 1, and that's why we're seeing these big changes being implemented sooner than initially intended, and it does make sense. Levels 25 to 40 take a bit longer when compared to 1 to 25, and quests become much less condensed and less straightforward too. You have to travel around a lot at this level bracket, and for not a lot of experience, which leads most folks to just spam dungeons to level up. It's one of the more efficient methods of leveling, but it isn't the most interesting thing in the world, and it still takes quite a while, so doing that multiple times for multiple characters is probably why people aren't playing ults quite as much. So speeding up leveling should encourage people to play more characters or jump into the Season of Discovery if they're still waiting on the sidelines. Increasing the gold rewards from quests encourages people to do something besides just spamming dungeons all day, and reducing the cost of mounts just makes that system more accessible and give everyone a chance to get their much needed speed boost up at level 40. It's all focused around increasing accessibility and making things easier, which is why it's so divisive. Some folks play Classic because it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to take forever to do anything, and they want to grind all day, every day. They want everything to stay time-consuming and difficult, which really shouldn't be the point of Season of Discovery in my opinion. Some people play Classic because it's simpler, with less to keep track of and fewer systems to decipher. They don't mind things being easier or taking less time because they're there for their simpler playstyle, and then there are all manner of folk in between obviously, but making things easier is great for one camp and terrible for the other, and that's the controversy that we're seeing surrounding these changes. Personally, I would love to see more of these kinds of changes, especially when the phase is halfway done like phase 2 is right now. This is the midpoint, so speed things up, let folks get caught up with ults, multiple characters, or the chaps who want to wait for things to be faster. That's okay, this is a seasonal experience. Season of Discovery will end at some point, the dev team has said as much, so making it more accessible will allow more folks to hop in and give it a try without feeling like all of their investment will end up being wasted. This game mode should be all about experimenting, and that's what the dev team is doing. But either way, all of these changes will go live with the next weekly reset, so Tuesday the 5th of March for the US realms, and they will make the entire leveling up process much faster and easier, so if you want to get stuck in with some ults or just try out Season of Discovery for the first time, getting up to level 40 should be a breeze with these changes in place. Now that's all fine and dandy, but what about some retail updates? It's been a little quiet recently in Dragonflight, but that's not all too surprising. Patch 10.2.6 is the first patch in a long time that will be a complete surprise. We won't have any information about the patch before it goes live by the looks of things, so the usual drip of PTR updates and changes just isn't there for this upcoming patch, which can make it feel like retail hasn't seen any changes for quite a while, but the wait is almost over. We know 10.2.6 will go live sometime in March, so sometime this month, and there's a recent blue post talking about the Community Council. Apparently the dev team are working on a lot of behind the scenes stuff right now, including going through the 2024 applications for the Community Council, so the next round of invites should go out shortly. In addition to that, the post also highlighted that the next round of content has not been publicly examined, but that will shift in the coming weeks as some things are revealed and the PTR realms are opened up for testing once again, which is most likely going to be Season 4 testing that we are expecting after 10.2.6 goes live. So the lull is almost over. We should have some new retail content to look forward to very soon. But that's all the updates we have for this week, so that's it for this video. What do you think about the Season of Discovery changes that are making everything much easier? How do you feel about hero talents from what we've seen so far? And when do you think we'll see patch 10.2.6 go live? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon and to all of our members here on YouTube. You can see the names floating by on screen. If you'd like to add your name to the end of every video with a special shout out at the start of the next video, you can find links in the description over to Patreon and click the join button just below this video. And if you want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss another video. Thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.